Wheelchair Heiress spoke to no one until this orphan boy arrived. Mrs. Margaret Wilson watched through the doctor's office window as Dr. Thompson flipped through yet another stack of test results. 2 years had passed since her only granddaughter, Emily, had become a ghost in her own home. The 12-year-old girl hadn't uttered a single word since the accident that changed everything. It was during a routine checkup at City Memorial Hospital in Chicago that something unexpected happened. Emily sat in her wheelchair beside her grandmother when a boy approached, making funny faces. His curly hair bounced as he imitated a monkey, then a bird. Suddenly, for the first time in 2 years, Emily's lips curled into a shy smile. "Who are you, young man?" Margaret asked, surprised by her granddaughter's reaction. "I'm Ethan, Mom. I live here at the hospital shelter," replied the 10-year-old boy, pointing down the hallway. "I came for my heart tests." Margaret noticed his simple, worn clothes, but his eyes sparkled with genuine joy. Emily kept watching him, something she hadn't done with a stranger in a long time. "Can I do more silly stuff for her?" Ethan asked, already starting to mimic a penguin. Emily let out a soft sound, almost like a muffled giggle. Margaret's heart clenched. It had been so long since she'd seen her granddaughter react to anything. Dr. Thompson appeared in the doorway, observing the scene. Ethan was now pretending to be a robot, moving mechanically, and Emily was clearly paying attention, her eyes following his every move. "This is very interesting," the doctor murmured to Margaret. "She hasn't shown interest in anything for months." "Ma'am, does she want me to keep going?" Ethan asked, looking straight at Emily. The girl gave a slight nod. It was almost imperceptible, but it was there. "Ethan, you live at the hospital shelter?" Margaret questioned. "Yes, ma'am, since I was little. For my parents, they're not here anymore, but it's okay, the nurses take care of us." Margaret felt something stir in her chest. There was an innocence in this boy that contrasted with the hardness Emily had developed. Her granddaughter had always been a difficult child, but after the accident she had completely shut down. "Ethan needs to go back for his tests," said a nurse who appeared in the hallway. "Bye, wheelchair princess," Ethan said, waving at Emily. "I'll come up with more games for next time we meet." Emily watched him walk away, and Margaret noticed her granddaughter turning her head to keep watching until he disappeared down the hall. On the way home, Margaret couldn't stop thinking. Emily remained silent as always, but something had changed. There was a different restlessness in her. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The mansion in North Shore was as it always was, silent and heavy. Margaret had hired the best professionals to care for her granddaughter. The housekeeper, Deborah, was always nearby, and 2 nurses took shifts during the day. Still, Emily lived in her own world. "Mrs. Wilson, how was the appointment today?" Deborah asked, helping Emily out of the car. "Different," Margaret replied thoughtfully. "Very different." Emily was taken to her room on the ground floor. Every necessary adaptation had been made to the house: ramps, an accessible bathroom, a hospital bed. Money was no issue for the Wilson family. The problem was bringing Emily back. That night, Margaret couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the smile she'd seen on her granddaughter's face. How long had it been since she'd seen that? Certainly since before the accident. The accident. Margaret still blamed herself for letting Emily go to that friend's birthday party. If she had said no, if she had insisted her granddaughter stayed home. But there was no use thinking about that now. What mattered was the present. And today, for the first time, she saw a glimpse of the old Emily. The next day, Margaret made a decision that surprised everyone. "I want to meet that boy," she said to Deborah during breakfast. "What boy, Mrs. Wilson?" "Ethan, from the hospital. I need to talk to him." Deborah raised her eyebrows but didn't question it. She had known her employer for years and knew that once Margaret made up her mind, nothing could change it. Margaret called the hospital and managed to speak with the social worker in charge of the shelter. Ethan was indeed there. He had been an orphan since he was 7 and was being treated for a heart condition. "He's a very special child," said the social worker, Susan, "always cheerful, despite everything he's been through. Everyone here adores him. I'd like to speak with him." "Would that be possible?" Of course, Mrs. Wilson, he's always here in the mornings for his treatments. Margaret hung up the phone and looked at Emily, who was in the living room watching TV without really paying attention to the screen. Emily, how about we go back to the hospital today? The girl turned her face toward her grandma. She didn't say anything, but Margaret saw interest in her eyes. At the hospital, Ethan was in the recreation room, coloring a drawing when Margaret and Emily arrived. "The wheelchair princess is back," he exclaimed, running up to them. Emily gave that shy smile again. "Ethan, I spoke with Susan about you," Margaret said. "How about spending an afternoon at our house to play with Emily?" The boy's eyes lit up, but he hesitated. "Can I really, Mom? Your house must be really nice." "Of course you can. Emily needs company." Ethan looked at Emily and waved. The girl waved back, a small but meaningful gesture. "Susan said you like to draw," Margaret remarked. "I love it. I draw everything, animals, people, houses. I even made up a superhero." Ethan showed them his drawings. They were simple, done with basic colored pencils, but full of life. Margaret noticed Emily was studying every detail. "Emily used to draw a lot too before—" Margaret stopped herself. She didn't want to mention the accident in front of the boy. "She can draw with me. I'll teach her new tricks." The afternoon at the mansion was eye-opening. Ethan was amazed by the size of the house but wasn't intimidated. Instead, he played with Emily as if they'd known each other for years. Deborah watched from a distance, suspicious. There was something about that boy that bothered her. Maybe it was how easily he had gotten close to Emily, or maybe it was the fact that he was a stranger in a home she had protected for so long. Ethan brought out paper and colored pencils and sat on the floor next to Emily's wheelchair. "I'm going to draw you," he said, starting to sketch. Emily watched him closely. When Ethan finished, he showed her the drawing, a smiling girl in a wheelchair surrounded by flowers. Emily picked up a pencil and started drawing too. Her hands shook a little. She hadn't drawn in a long time, but slowly she gained confidence. When she finished, she showed Ethan the picture, a boy with curly hair making funny faces. "That's me," Ethan exclaimed excitedly. "You draw really well." Margaret watched, moved. It had been 2 years since she'd seen Emily take interest in anything. When it was time for Ethan to return to the hospital, Emily grew restless. She didn't want him to leave. "Can I come back tomorrow?" Ethan asked Margaret. "Of course you can." Emily waved at Ethan and he waved back. After the boy left, Emily kept staring at the door for a long time. That night, Deborah went to find Margaret. "Mrs. Wilson, I need to speak with you." "What is it, Deborah?" "This boy. Don't you find it strange how close he's getting to Emily? He barely knows her. I think that's exactly what Emily needs. Someone who doesn't see her as a poor little thing." "But he's a stranger, Mrs. Wilson, and an orphan. We know nothing about his family." Helena sighed. She knew Deborah well enough to understand she was being protective, not mean-spirited. "I'll talk more with the social worker tomorrow." "But Emily smiled today, Deborah. Twice." "I saw, Mrs. Wilson, and I'm happy about that. I just think we should be careful." The next morning, Ethan arrived early at the hospital for his routine tests. The cardiologist, Dr. Johnson, was concerned about some results. "Ethan, have you been taking your medicine properly?" "Yes, doctor. Every day." "Your heartbeat is a little irregular. Maybe you should take it easy for a few days." "But I promised the wheelchair princess I'd visit her today." Dr. Johnson smiled. Ethan always talked about this mysterious girl. "Who is this princess, Ethan?" "A new friend. She doesn't talk, but we understand each other anyway. I'm going to teach her how to draw superheroes today." "All right, you can go, but no running around, deal?" Ethan arrived at the mansion excited, carrying a folder with new drawings. Emily was waiting in the living room, which surprised Deborah. "She's been anxious since this morning," the housekeeper remarked to Helena. Ethan sat beside Emily and showed her his new drawings. He had sketched a superheroine in a wheelchair. "Look, it's Super Emily. She has special powers and saves everyone." Emily took the drawing and studied it for a long time. Then she picked up a pencil and began drawing underneath. She sketched the boy next to the superheroine. "Is that me, too? Are we a team?" Ethan asked excitedly. Emily nodded. "Yes." It was the first time she had answered a question since the accident. Helena was watching from the doorway when the phone rang. It was Dr. Thompson. "Mrs. Wilson, I'd like to talk about Emily. Can I stop by this afternoon?" "Of course, Doctor." Dr. Thompson arrived in the afternoon and found Emily and Ethan drawing together in the garden. Ethan had managed to take Emily's wheelchair outside, something she hadn't done in months. "Interesting," the doctor murmured to Helena. "She's more active. Ethan has a special way with her. I need to warn you about something, Mrs. Wilson. Emily might be using her muteness as a form of control. Sometimes children do this unconsciously." "What do you mean?" "She's discovered that by not speaking, she gets everyone's undivided attention. It's a form of power. This boy's presence might change that dynamic, but it could also create dependence." Helena grew worried. Was she making a mistake by allowing Ethan's visits? "What do you suggest, Doctor?" "Let's observe for a few more days. If Emily becomes too anxious when he's not around, maybe we should limit the visits." Ethan didn't hear the conversation, but he noticed the adults were concerned. He knew that look well. He'd seen it many times before when families interested in adoption met him and then changed their minds. "Emily, I have to go," he whispered to the girl. Emily looked at him worriedly. "But it's not forever. I'll come back tomorrow, I promise." Emily picked up the pencil and wrote something on the paper. "Friend." Ethan smiled and wrote underneath, "Forever." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The next morning, Ethan didn't show up. Helena called the hospital and learned he had fallen ill during the night and was admitted. Emily was restless all day. She kept looking at the door, waiting for Ethan to arrive. In the afternoon, she began to get more restless, hitting her arms against the wheelchair. "She's never done this before," said Deborah, worried. Mrs. Wilson decided to take Emily to the hospital to see Ethan. The boy was in a small room, connected to some machines. "Princess," he exclaimed when he saw Emily. "I'm sorry I didn't visit you today." Emily moved closer to the bed and took Ethan's hand. It was the first time she had voluntarily touched someone since the accident. "My heart acts a little crazy sometimes," Ethan explained, "but the doctors take good care of me." Dr. Johnson appeared in the room and spoke privately with Mrs. Wilson. "Ethan has a serious heart condition. We need to monitor him more closely in the coming weeks. Does that mean he won't be able to visit my granddaughter? For now, it's best if he stays here. But you can visit him," Mrs. Wilson told Emily, who looked visibly sad. But she kept holding Ethan's hand. "Don't be sad, Princess. When I get better, I'll come up with new games for us." Emily let go of his hand and grabbed a piece of paper from the table. She quickly drew something and showed it. It was her pushing her wheelchair to the hospital to visit Ethan. "You'll visit me?" Ethan asked excitedly. Emily nodded yes. Over the next 2 weeks, Mrs. Wilson took Emily to the hospital every day. Ethan was recovering well, and the two developed a routine. They drew together, Ethan made up stories, and Emily listened attentively. It was during one of these visits that something unexpected happened. Ethan was telling a story about a magical kingdom when Emily whispered something almost inaudible. "Cool." Ethan stopped mid-sentence. Mrs. Wilson, who was reading in a nearby chair, looked up. "What did you say, Emily?" Ethan asked softly. Emily turned red and lowered her head, but Ethan insisted, "You can say it, Princess. I heard a beautiful word." Emily looked at him and whispered again, "Cool." Ethan grinned from ear to ear, and Mrs. Wilson felt tears in her eyes. It was the first word Emily had spoken in 2 years. "Thank you for talking to me, Princess," Ethan said, holding her hand. From that day on, Emily began whispering single words to Ethan. Always quiet, always hesitant, but they were there. "Yes," when Ethan asked if she wanted to hear a story. "No," when he asked if she was tired. "Pretty," when he showed her a new drawing. Mrs. Wilson was overjoyed, but Dr. Thompson warned her to be careful. "She's only speaking to Ethan. This could be problematic if it creates emotional dependence." "But it's progress, Doctor." "Yes, but we need her to generalize, to speak to others too." Ethan was discharged from the hospital after 3 weeks. He was eager to resume his visits to the mansion. Emily was also eager, though she only showed it through restlessness. On his first day back, Ethan brought a surprise. He had made a sketchbook telling the story of Super Emily and Ethan, filled with imaginary adventures. Emily flipped through the book, completely focused. When she finished, she looked at Ethan and said, "Thank you." The word came out clear, audible. Ethan jumped for joy. "You spoke so well, Princess." Emily smiled, a real wide smile. But not everything was fine. Deborah had been watching the children's interactions with growing concern. Something bothered her, though she couldn't quite pinpoint what. It was one afternoon when she figured it out. Emily and Ethan were playing in her room when Deborah heard soft voices. She approached the door and heard, "Ethan, you'll never leave, right?" Emily asked. "Of course not, Princess. We're friends forever." "But what if your family comes to take you away?" "I don't have a family. Only you now. Promise you'll never leave me alone, I promise." Deborah stepped away from the door, disturbed. That conversation didn't seem healthy. Emily was developing a dangerous dependence on the boy. She sought out Mrs. Wilson that same afternoon. "Mrs. Wilson, we need to talk about Emily and Ethan." "What happened, Deborah?" "I heard them talking today. Emily is creating this fantasy that Ethan will never leave her. That's not good." Mrs. Wilson grew thoughtful. Maybe Deborah was right. "Emily has always been intense in her relationships," Mrs. Wilson reflected, "even before the accident." "Exactly. And now, after everything she's been through, she's clinging to Ethan as if he's her salvation. But he's helping so much." "Yes, but what will happen when he grows up? When he has other interests? When maybe a family adopts him?" Mrs. Wilson hadn't thought of that. Ethan was an orphan, and he could eventually be adopted. How would Emily react? She decided to talk to Susan, the hospital social worker. "Ethan is a very special boy," Susan said. "There have been a few families interested in him, but something always stops the adoption." "What kind of thing?" "Well, Ethan always makes excuses. Says he can't leave his friends at the shelter or that he needs to stay close to the doctors. The truth is, he's afraid of getting attached and being abandoned again." "And you allow that?" "We try to help him overcome those fears, but we can't force an adoption. It has to feel natural for both the child and the family." Mrs. Wilson left the hospital deep in thought. Ethan had his own traumas and fears too. Maybe his friendship with Emily was important for both of them, but in different ways. That night, she watched Emily during dinner. The girl was more animated, actually moving her food around instead of just pushing it across her plate. "Emily, you really like Ethan, don't you?" Emily nodded. "What if one day he had to leave?" Emily stopped moving her food and looked at her grandma with wide eyes. He promised he'd never leave," she whispered. "Sometimes things change, sweetheart. People grow up, lives move on." Emily shook her head fiercely. "No, Ethan is my friend forever." Mrs. Wilson saw tears forming in her granddaughter's eyes and decided not to press the matter further. The next morning, Ethan arrived earlier than usual, looking mysterious. "Princess, I have a surprise for you." Emily smiled, curious. "I found this in the shelter's attic," Ethan said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Inside was a heart-shaped pendant broken in half. "Look, we each keep one half. That way, even when we're far apart, we'll still be connected." Ethan placed one half of the heart on a chain and fastened it around Emily's neck. The other half he wore himself. "Now we're heart friends," he said, grinning. Emily touched the pendant and whispered, "Forever." Deborah, watching from a distance, felt a chill. This was turning into a mutual obsession. She decided to take drastic action. Once Ethan left, she went to Mrs. Wilson. "Mrs. Wilson, I think we should stop these visits for a while." "Why, Deborah?" "Emily is developing an unhealthy dependence, and the boy seems just as attached. This isn't good for either of them." Mrs. Wilson hesitated. Emily had been improving so much. "Maybe you're right. I'll talk to Dr. Thompson." Dr. Thompson agreed with Deborah. "Emily needs to learn to connect with other people too. Let's try a test. 1 week without Ethan's visits. Mrs. Wilson was torn but agreed. The next day, when Ethan arrived at the mansion, Mrs. Wilson met him at the door. "Ethan, sweetheart, we need to talk." The boy noticed something different in her tone and grew uneasy. "Did I do something wrong, Ma'am Margaret?" "No, dear, but the doctors think Emily needs some time alone to learn how to talk to other people too." Ethan felt his world collapse. He had been through this before. I can try to talk less or play different games, or just don't send me away, please." Margaret's heart ached. "It's not forever, Ethan, just a week." "A week?" The boy's eyes filled with tears. "But the princess will be sad." "Emily will understand." Ethan shook his head. "She won't understand. She'll think I abandoned her." But Margaret had already made her decision. Ethan returned to the hospital heartbroken. Emily waited for Ethan all day. When night came and he didn't show up, she grew restless. "Where's Ethan?" she asked Deborah. "He can't come today, sweetheart." "Why?" Deborah hesitated. She didn't want to lie, but she also didn't want to hurt Emily. "He's busy at the hospital." Emily didn't believe her. She touched the pendant around her neck and whispered, "Ethan." The next morning, Emily was even more agitated. She spent the whole day staring at the door, waiting for Ethan to appear. On the third day without a visit, Emily stopped speaking again. She fell back into complete silence. Margaret was desperate. "Deborah, she's completely regressed." "It's normal, Mrs. Wilson, she'll adjust." "I don't know if this was a good idea." On the fourth day, Emily refused to leave her room. She stayed in bed, turned away from everyone, not responding to anything. Margaret called Dr. Thompson. "Doctor, Emily has gone back to how she was before, worse even." "It's expected, Mrs. Wilson. She's grieving. She needs to learn she can be happy without depending entirely on Ethan." "But it's so painful for her." "Sometimes healing is painful. Let's wait a few more days." Meanwhile, at the hospital, Ethan wasn't doing well either. He refused to eat properly and spent all day drawing pictures of Emily. Susan was worried. "Ethan, what's going on? You were doing so well." "Can I call the princess? Just to see if she's okay?" "Who is this princess, Ethan? You always talk about her, but you've never really told us." Ethan hesitated. Then he told the whole story, about Emily, their friendship, how she had started speaking again. "And now they won't let me visit her anymore," he finished, crying. Susan was shocked. She hadn't realized Ethan had grown so close to a family. "Ethan, I'll call this Mrs. Wilson and figure out what's really going on." Susan called Margaret, and they talked at length. "Mrs. Wilson, Ethan is really upset. He feels rejected all over again." "That wasn't our intention. We just wanted what was best for Emily." "I understand, but maybe we can find a middle ground. How about supervised visits, with set times and limited duration?" Margaret considered the proposal. Emily had been miserable for 4 days. "I'll talk to Emily's doctor." Dr. Thompson initially resisted, but given Emily's condition, he agreed to supervised visits. Twice a week, 2 hours each visit, and always with an adult present. Margaret called Susan to share the decision. When Ethan heard he could see Emily again, his face lit up. "Can I go today, please?" "Hold on, Ethan, we'll arrange everything properly." The next day, Ethan arrived at the mansion carrying a pile of drawings he had made during their time apart. All of them were of Emily. When he entered her room, Emily was lying in bed, turned away. Ethan approached slowly. "Princess?" Emily turned slowly. When she saw Ethan, her eyes filled with tears. You came back," she whispered. "Of course I came back, I promised, remember?" Emily struggled to sit up and threw herself into Ethan's arms. It was the first time she had ever done that. "I thought you had abandoned me," she cried. "Never, Princess. I will never abandon you." Deborah, watching from the doorway, felt a tightness in her chest. Maybe she had been too harsh with the children. Ethan showed all the drawings he had made. Emily examined them one by one, gently touching each. "I made one for every day I couldn't see you," Ethan explained. Emily picked up a paper and wrote, "I missed you too." From that day on, the visits followed the new schedule. Ethan went to the mansion on Tuesdays and Thursdays, always accompanied by Deborah or Mrs. Wilson, but something had changed between the children. The forced separation had made them even closer, as if it were proof that their friendship was real. Emily began to speak more, but always in whispers and only with Ethan. With the adults, she remained silent. Dr. Thompson suggested a new approach. Let's try group therapy. Emily, Ethan, and other children. Mrs. Wilson thought the idea was interesting, but when she proposed it to Emily, the girl shook her head vigorously. "Don't you want to meet other kids?" Ethan asked. "Just you," whispered Emily. Ethan grew thoughtful. He liked being special to Emily, but he also understood she needed more friends. "Princess, what if I go with you? What if I go with... We can meet other kids together." Emily hesitated but agreed. The first group therapy session was a disaster. Emily refused to participate in the activities and clung to Ethan the entire time. Ethan tried to include her in the games, but Emily only followed him and ignored the other children. "This isn't working," Dr. Thompson remarked to Mrs. Wilson. "Emily needs to learn to socialize without Ethan." "But they're so close." "Exactly, and that's preventing her social development." Mrs. Wilson was in a dilemma. Every attempt to separate the children resulted in regression for Emily. Then something unexpected happened. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. During one of Ethan's visits to the mansion, he began to feel unwell. He was playing with Emily in the garden when he suddenly turned pale and clutched his chest. "Ethan?" Emily noticed immediately that something was wrong. I'm okay, Princess," he said, though he was clearly struggling to breathe. Emily moved closer to his wheelchair and touched his face. "You're not okay," she said in a voice louder than usual. Deborah, who was nearby, noticed the situation and approached. "Ethan, what are you feeling?" "My heart, it's beating too fast." Deborah immediately called Mrs. Wilson and the hospital. Ethan was rushed in, and Emily insisted on going with him. At City Memorial Hospital, Ethan was admitted for observation. Dr. Johnson was concerned. "Ethan hasn't been taking his medication properly," he told Mrs. Wilson. "His blood levels are low." "But he always said he was taking it." "Kids sometimes hide when they're not feeling well. He might have stopped taking his medicine so he could play more." Mrs. Wilson felt guilty. Had the visits to the mansion put Ethan at risk? Emily refused to leave the hospital. She stayed by Ethan's bedside, holding his hand. "Princess, you need to go home and rest," Ethan said weakly. "No," Emily replied firmly, the first time she had ever said no to him. "I'm staying." Mrs. Wilson tried to convince her to go home, but Emily refused outright. "She can sleep here tonight," Dr. Johnson said. "Maybe it's best for both of them." During the night, Ethan had a few episodes of chest pain. Emily stayed awake the whole time, holding his hand and whispering to him. "Everything will be okay, Ethan. I'll take care of you now." It was the first time Emily had taken on the role of caregiver instead of being cared for. The next day, Ethan was feeling better, but he would need to stay hospitalized for a few more days. "Ethan," said Dr. Johnson, "I need you to be honest with me. Did you stop taking your medicine?" Ethan lowered his head. "Sometimes I forgot, and sometimes I didn't want to take it because it made me feel sick and I couldn't play properly." "Ethan, your heart needs this medicine. If you don't take it, you could get very sick." Emily, who was listening, squeezed Ethan's hand tighter. "You have to take your medicine," she said. "Promise." "I promise, Princess." "Do you really promise? Because I need you here." Ethan looked into Emily's eyes and saw something different. She was taking care of him, protecting him. "I really promise." During the days Ethan was hospitalized, Emily visited him every day, and something surprising happened. She started talking to the nurses. At first it was just monosyllables. "Yes," "No," "Thank you." Then short sentences. "Is Ethan better? Can I help? Does he need water?" Dr. Thompson was impressed when Mrs. Wilson told him. Emily is developing active empathy. Instead of just receiving care, she's learning to care for others. Is that good? Very good. It's a sign of emotional maturity. When Ethan was discharged, He had a new medication schedule with stricter times. "I'll help you remember," Emily said. "We can make a calendar." Ethan smiled. The princess was becoming his protector too. Back at the mansion, the children established a new routine. Emily helped Ethan organize his medicines and reminded him of his schedule. Ethan, in turn, kept encouraging Emily to speak more and interact with others. "Princess, how about saying thank you to Deborah today? She made that delicious cake for us." Emily hesitated, but when Deborah brought the snack, she whispered, "Thank you, Deborah." Deborah nearly dropped the tray in surprise. "You're welcome, sweetheart," she replied, moved. This was the beginning of a gradual change. Emily started including other people in her circle, always with Ethan as the bridge. But not everything was perfect. Emily still had moments of anxiety when Ethan wasn't around, and Ethan still feared being abandoned if he wasn't perfect all the time. It was during a routine checkup that Dr. Thompson suggested something radical. "I think Emily is ready to try school again." Mrs. Wilson was shocked. "School, but she hasn't left the house alone in 2 years. Exactly why? She needs new challenges, new stimulation. What about Ethan? Can he go with her? Ethan isn't school-aged yet, and it would be counterproductive. Emily needs to learn to interact without him." Emily panicked when she heard the proposal. "No, I can't go alone," she said, crying. "You won't be alone," Mrs. Wilson said. "I'll take you and pick you up every day." "But Ethan won't be there." "No, but you'll make new friends." Emily shook her head vigorously. Ethan, who was there, took her hand. "Princess, you're brave. Remember when you took care of me at the hospital? But you were with me there. And now I'll be waiting for you when you come back, every day, and you'll tell me everything that happened at school." Emily looked into Ethan's eyes and saw determination. "Do you promise you'll be here when I get back?" "I promise." The first week of school was extremely hard. Emily cried every morning and refused to speak to anyone. The teachers were patient, but Emily remained completely silent during class. At home, she told Ethan everything, about her classmates, the activities, the teachers. "Teacher Jessica seems nice," Emily said. "She has hair like yours." "How about you say good morning to her tomorrow?" suggested Ethan. "I don't know." "I know you can do it, Princess." It took 3 weeks, but Emily finally whispered good morning to her teacher, Jessica. The teacher was so moved that she called Mrs. Wilson immediately. "Mrs. Wilson, Emily spoke to me today." It was just a good morning, but it was huge progress. Helena celebrated with Emily and Ethan that afternoon. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart," said Mrs. Wilson. "Ethan taught me to be brave," replied Emily. Ethan smiled, proud. But the challenges were only just beginning. Emily still refused to participate in group activities and didn't play with other children. That's when teacher Jessica had an idea. "Emily, you draw so well. How about making a drawing to decorate our classroom?" Emily liked the idea. She drew a beautiful landscape with flowers and birds. When the other students saw it, they were impressed. "You draw really well, Emily," said a girl named Olivia. Emily blushed but whispered, "Thank you." "Can you teach me?" asked Olivia. Emily looked at teacher Jessica, who smiled encouragingly. "I can," whispered Emily. That was the first step for Emily to make friends at school. Olivia became her first friend besides Ethan, but Emily still talked about Ethan all the time to Olivia. "Who is this Ethan?" Olivia asked one day. "My best friend. He lives at the hospital, but he visits me often. Can I meet him?" Emily loved the idea. She asked Mrs. Wilson if Olivia could come to the mansion to meet Ethan. Mrs. Wilson thought it was a good idea. It would be nice for Emily to have more friends. When Olivia went to the mansion and met Ethan, she was enchanted. "He's so cool, Emily, and he draws really well too." The three of them spent the afternoon playing together, and Emily felt happy to share Ethan with someone. But it didn't take long for problems to arise. Olivia started liking Ethan a lot and wanted to play with him more than with Emily. Emily got jealous and became possessive of Ethan again. "Ethan is my friend first," she told Olivia one day. "But he can be friends with both of us," Olivia replied. "No, he's special to me." Olivia was hurt and stopped talking to Emily at school. Ethan realized what had happened when Emily told him, sad. Princess, you lost a friend because of me. Olivia wanted to take you away from me. No one can take me away from you, but I can be friends with other people too. And so can you. Emily didn't like the answer. Don't you love me anymore? Of course I do. But love isn't about keeping someone all to yourself. It's about sharing. Emily was confused. She didn't quite understand what Ethan meant. It was Mrs. Wilson who explained better that night. Emily, when you were little before the accident, you had lots of friends, remember? Emily nodded. Did you still love me, even with other friends? Emily thought and nodded again. It's the same with Ethan. You can love each other and still have other friends. Emily began to understand. The next day, she apologized to Olivia. I'm sorry, Olivia. Ethan can be your friend too. Olivia was happy, and the two made up. From that day on, Emily started to understand friendships better. She and Ethan remained special to each other, but now they had other friends too. Emily made more friends at school. Mason, who loved drawing like her, Madison, who was very funny, and Tyler, who helped her with her wheelchair when needed. Ethan also made friends at the hospital, other young patients who were staying there. When they told each other about their new friends, instead of jealousy, they felt proud. I'm happy you have more friends, Princess, Ethan would say. I'm also happy for your friends, Emily replied. Dr. Thompson was impressed with Emily's progress. She's developing socially in a surprising way, he told Mrs. Wilson. Her friendship with Ethan has been truly transformative. And what about Ethan? Ethan is doing well too. The responsibility of caring for Emily is helping him overcome his own traumas. But there was still a challenge ahead. Emily had been attending school for months, making friends and speaking more. Yet she still relied heavily on Ethan emotionally. Dr. Thompson suggested a test, a week of summer camp for Emily without Ethan. She needs to prove to herself that she can be happy without him around. Mrs. Wilson hesitated. Their last attempts at separation hadn't worked. This time is different, Dr. Thompson argued. Emily is more mature now. She has other friends. And it's just 1 week. When Mrs. Wilson suggested summer camp, Emily was frightened. A whole week without Ethan. Olivia will be there too. And you'll get to do fun activities. Emily looked at Ethan, who was present. What do you think, Ethan? Ethan was torn. He didn't want to be apart from Emily, but he knew she needed this. I think you should go, Princess. It'll be fun. Are you sure? I am. And when you come back, you'll have so many stories to tell me. Emily agreed, but was nervous. The first night at camp was hard. She missed Ethan and cried quietly in the bathroom. Olivia comforted her. Emily, Ethan will be waiting for you. And look at all the cool things we get to do here. Gradually, Emily got involved in the activities. She took art workshops, played in the pool, and joined scavenger hunts. By the third day, she was genuinely enjoying herself. I like it here, she told Olivia, but I still miss Ethan. It's normal to miss him, but you're being brave. On the last day of camp, Emily won a Best Drawing Award in an art competition. When Mrs. Wilson came to pick her up, Emily was beaming. Grandma, look what I won! I'll show Ethan. On the way home, Emily recounted everything that had happened at camp. Mrs. Wilson noticed her granddaughter seemed more confident, more independent. Ethan was waiting anxiously at the mansion. Princess, how was it? Emily excitedly told him everything, the activities, the new friends she'd made, the award she'd won. I missed you, she said, but I also had a lot of fun. Ethan smiled. I'm proud of you. You're so brave. What about you? How was your week? Good too. I drew a lot and helped the nurses with the other kids. They hugged, happy to be together again, but also proud they'd managed to be apart. Dr. Thompson was pleased with the outcome. Emily passed the test. She can be independent when she needs to be. And now, Mrs. Wilson asked, now they can continue being friends without fear. The unhealthy dependence has turned into a healthy friendship. Months passed. Emily kept progressing in school, Ethan continued his treatment at the hospital, and their friendship remained strong but balanced. Emily now spoke normally with her family, teachers, and friends. She was still a shy girl, but no longer silent. Ethan was also doing better. His heart tests showed stability, and he was growing up healthy. It was during a routine checkup that Dr. Johnson gave news that would change everything. Ethan, your results are so good that you don't need to live at the hospital anymore. You can go back to a regular children's home. Ethan was happy, but also worried. Can I still visit Emily? Of course. You just don't need constant medical supervision anymore. Ethan shared the news with Emily, who was thrilled. That's great, Ethan. Are you cured? Not completely. I'll have to take medicine forever, but I'm much better. And will you keep visiting me? Always, Princess. Ethan's move to the regular shelter went smoothly. The place was farther from the mansion, but Mrs. Wilson offered to pick him up for visits. Everything seemed to be going well when something unexpected happened. A family became interested in Ethan. Susan called Mrs. Wilson to tell her. It's a young couple, no children. They were enchanted by Ethan when they met him. Mrs. Wilson felt her heart tighten. And Emily? How would she react? Does Ethan know? Not yet. We want to make sure the family passes all evaluations first, but the chances are high. Mrs. Wilson hung up the phone, troubled. She'd have to tell Emily at some point. She decided to talk to Ethan first. Ethan, Susan told me about the family interested in you. Ethan grew serious. What do you think, ma'am? I don't know. I've always wanted a family. But what about Emily? Emily would be sad, but she'd understand. You can still be friends. What if they don't let me visit her? Why wouldn't they? Because I always ruin everything in the end. Something always happens, and families give up on me. Mrs. Wilson saw Ethan's insecurity and wanted to protect him. What if I talk to this family to explain your friendship with Emily? You'd do that? Of course, Ethan. Mrs. Wilson arranged a meeting with the couple interested in Ethan, Robert and Jennifer, both in their 30s. We really want a child, Jennifer said. Ethan seemed like a special boy. He is special, Mrs. Wilson agreed, but I need to tell you about his friendship with my granddaughter. She told the whole story. Emily's accident, how Ethan helped her speak again, their bond. Wow, what a beautiful story, Robert said. Of course Ethan can keep visiting your granddaughter. That would mean so much to both of them. We completely understand. Friendships like that are rare. Mrs. Wilson felt relieved. The couple seemed understanding. Now she had to tell Emily. She chose a moment when Ethan was there. Emily, I have some news. What news, Grandma? A family wants to adopt Ethan. Emily turned pale. Adopt? You mean he's leaving? Not necessarily, Ethan said quickly. They said I can still visit you. But you'll live with them. If everything works out, yes. Emily stayed silent for a long time. Do you want to go? She finally asked. Ethan hesitated. I want a family, but I don't want to lose you. What if they change their minds? What if they don't let you visit? Mrs. Wilson talked to them. They seem nice. Emily touched the pendant around her neck. Remember when you gave me this, you said we'd be friends forever. And we will. Having parents doesn't change that. Emily looked into Ethan's eyes and saw he meant it. Then I want you to go, she said, tears in her eyes. You deserve a family. Ethan was moved. Thank you, Princess. They hugged, and Mrs. Wilson watched, emotional. The adoption process took a few months. During that time, Ethan got to know Robert and Jennifer better. They were warm and understanding. They visited Ethan at the shelter often, and even went to the mansion to meet Emily. Now we see why Ethan talks about you so much, Jennifer told Emily. You really are special friends. Emily liked the couple. They genuinely cared about Ethan and didn't try to separate them. When the adoption was finalized, there was a small celebration at the shelter. Emily was there, along with Mrs. Wilson. Now you have real parents, Emily told Ethan. And you're still my best friend, he replied. Robert and Jennifer approached. Ethan, we want you to know our home is always open for Emily whenever you two want to meet. Really? Asked Ethan, excited. Of course. Friendships like yours should be nurtured. Emily smiled. Maybe everything would work out after all. Ethan moved to his new home, which was in another neighborhood of Chicago. Robert and Jennifer had prepared a special room for him, with a desk for drawing and a bookshelf full of books. "It's really beautiful, Ethan," said Emily when she visited the house for the first time. "Want to see my favorite part?" asked Ethan, leading her to the desk. On the wall above it were all the drawings Ethan had made of Emily over the years. "You kept all of them?" she asked, touched. "Of course. They're memories of our friendship." Emily smiled and pulled a notebook from her pocket. "I kept mine too. All the drawings you gave me." The two spent the afternoon flipping through the sketches, remembering the stories behind each one. Robert and Jennifer watched from a distance, moved by the children's friendship. "We made the right choice," Jennifer whispered to her husband. "Yes, Ethan is a special boy and so is Emily." Visits between Ethan and Emily became regular. Once a week, Ethan went to the mansion, and once a week, Emily went to his house. Ethan was adjusting well to family life. Robert helped him with homework, and Jennifer cooked his favorite meals. Emily also continued making progress. She was doing well in school, had many friends, and now spoke comfortably with the whole family. One day, Dr. Thompson made an interesting observation to Mrs. Wilson. "Emily no longer needs intensive psychological care. She's fully recovered socially and physically. She's improving too. The physical therapy exercises are working. Emily is gaining strength in her legs. Do you think she could walk again? It's hard to say, but she can certainly gain more physical independence." Mrs. Wilson shared the news with Emily, who was thrilled. "I'll tell Ethan." When Ethan heard, he was emotional. "Princess, you're getting even stronger." "It's true, yesterday I stood by myself for a few seconds." "Really? Do it again." Emily braced herself on the wheelchair arms and managed to rise briefly. Ethan clapped, excited. "You're a warrior, Princess." Inspired by her progress, Emily pushed herself even harder in therapy. Months passed. Ethan was fully settled into his new family and doing well in school. Emily kept improving both physically and emotionally. During a routine hospital visit, Dr. Johnson gave surprising news. "Ethan, your heart tests are perfect. You can reduce your medication." "Really, doctor?" "Yes, your heart is strong and healthy. The treatment was a success." Ethan could hardly believe it. He immediately called Emily. "Princess, the doctor said my heart is healed." "That's wonderful, Ethan. Now you can run and play without worry." "I really can. Want to play soccer with me on Sunday?" Emily hesitated. She hadn't tried sports since the accident. "I don't know if I can." "Yes, you can. You can play sitting down, or we can make up our own rules." On Sunday, Ethan, Emily, Robert, Jennifer and Mrs. Wilson went to the park. Ethan brought a ball. "Let's play a special game," he said. "Emily stays in goal. I'll kick the ball and she'll try to block it." Emily accepted the challenge. Ethan kicked gently, and Emily caught the ball. "I got it," she cheered, beaming. "You're the best goalie in the world," Ethan celebrated. They played all afternoon, inventing games Emily could join in. It was a perfect day. That night, when they returned home, Emily said to Margaret, "Grandma, today I felt normal for the first time since the accident." Margaret was moved. "For you've always been normal, sweetheart, just different. But today I felt complete, like nothing was missing. And nothing is missing. You have a family who loves you, true friends, and a bright future ahead." Emily smiled and touched the pendant around her neck. "And I have Ethan." "Yes, you have Ethan." That night, Emily did something she hadn't done in years. She prayed, thanking God for everything she had. Ethan, in his new bed, also gave thanks. He had parents who loved him, a best friend who would never abandon him, and a strong heart beating in his chest. Both fell asleep happy, knowing they had found something rare and precious, a true friendship that had changed them forever. The next morning, Emily woke up with an idea. "Grandma, can I call Ethan?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Ethan, I have an idea. How about we make a book about our story?" "What kind of book?" "With drawings and text, to show other kids that real friendship can heal anything." Ethan was excited. "I love the idea. We can draw together and you write the story." "Exactly. Should we start today?" "Let's do it." And so, Emily and Ethan began working on their book. They spent hours drawing and writing, telling the story of how they met, how they helped each other, and how they grew together. The book turned out beautiful, filled with colorful drawings and a touching story about friendship, perseverance, and love. Margaret suggested they share the book with other kids at the hospital. "How about we visit the shelter where Ethan used to live?" she proposed. "Great idea," the children agreed. At the shelter, Emily and Ethan told their story to the other kids. They showed the book and explained how friendship had helped them overcome their struggles. The children were enchanted. "You're like superheroes," said one little girl. "No," Emily replied. "We're just true friends." Ethan added, "And any kid can have friends like this. You just have to open your heart." The visit was so successful that they were invited to repeat the presentation at other institutions. Emily, who once wouldn't talk to anyone, now felt comfortable speaking to groups of children. Ethan, who had been afraid to trust people, now helped other kids face their fears. They had become ambassadors of friendship and resilience. Dr. Thompson was amazed by their transformation. "Emily and Ethan are proof that sometimes the best therapy is a true friendship," he told Margaret. "They saved each other," Margaret agreed, "and now they're saving other kids too." 2 years had passed since Emily and Ethan met at the hospital. Much had changed. Emily was in 8th grade, had many friends at school, and had regained much of the strength in her legs. She still used a wheelchair, but could stand and take a few steps with support. Ethan was in 6th grade, one of the top students in his class, and his heart was completely healthy. Robert and Jennifer had become devoted parents, and Ethan loved them as if they were his biological family. Margaret watched it all with pride. Her granddaughter had transformed from a sad, silent girl into a confident, talkative teenager. "Emily," Margaret said one day, "do you remember what you were like before meeting Ethan?" Emily thought for a moment. "I do, Grandma. I was lost. I thought I'd never be happy again. And now? Now I know there's always hope. Sometimes it comes in the form of a friend. Ethan really was special for you, and I hope I was special for him too." "I'm sure you were." Emily smiled and touched the pendant around her neck. She still wore the half-heart necklace Ethan had given her on their first visit day. Ethan also still wore his half. It was their lucky charm. One day at school, a classmate asked Ethan, "Is that a girlfriend necklace?" Ethan laughed. "No, it's a friendship one. The most important friendship of my life." "Tell me the story," the classmate asked. Ethan told him about Emily, how they'd met, how they'd helped each other. "Wow, that's an amazing story," said the classmate. "You two are real friends." "We are, and we always will be." Emily at her school also shared the story of her friendship with Ethan to anyone who'd listen. "He taught me that no matter what happens to you," she'd say, "there's always someone who can help you be happy again." Emily's teachers would get emotional every time she told the story. "Emily is an example of resilience," they'd remark among themselves, "and how friendship can be transformative," they'd agree. The two friends continued meeting regularly, sometimes at the mansion, sometimes at Ethan's house, sometimes at the park. They always had so much to talk about: school, friends, dreams for the future. "What do you want to be when you grow up, Ethan?" Emily asked one day. "I want to be a cardiologist. To help other kids like me." "That's beautiful. You'll be an amazing doctor." "And you, Princess? What do you want to be?" "I want to be a psychologist, to help kids who've gone through trauma like I did." "You'll be incredible too. No one understands recovery like you do." They smiled, imagining the bright future ahead. "Ethan," Emily said, "thank you for coming into my life." "Thank you for coming into mine too, Princess." They hugged, knowing that no matter what the future held, they'd always have each other. The friendship that began in a hospital hallway had become something eternal. They'd saved each other, and now they were ready to save others too. Mrs. Wilson watched them from afar and whispered, "Thank you, God, for bringing Ethan into Emily's life." And somewhere in the universe, two kindred spirits continued their journey together, proving that true love, whether romantic, familial, or friendship, can truly heal any wound. The story of Emily and Ethan became legend at the hospital where they'd met. Other children heard about the girl who found her voice again, and the boy who healed his heart, finding hope for their own battles. Dr. Thompson often told their story to other doctors as proof that sometimes the best medicine is genuine human connection. Dr. Johnson did the same in pediatric cardiology, showing that a wounded heart can heal when it finds reasons to beat with love. And Susan, the social worker, whenever a child at the shelter felt lost, would share Ethan and Emily's story, proving family isn't just who gives you life, but who gives you light. Years would pass. Emily and Ethan would grow up, follow different paths, but the story of the girl who couldn't speak and the orphan boy who made her smile would keep inspiring people worldwide. Because some friendships are eternal. Because some connections transcend time and space. And because sometimes a simple smile can change two lives forever. The end. So, dear listener, what did you think of this touching story? Have you ever experienced a life-changing friendship like Emily and Ethan's? Share in the comments which part moved you most. Don't forget to like this video to support our channel and subscribe so you won't miss other incredible stories we've prepared for you. Your engagement means so much to us.